Hi everybody, thanks for coming. This afternoon we have a senior protection seminar and our speaker is D.A. Marion Ryan, and we have other community speakers who will introduce themselves. Please help yourself to refreshments at any time. You're over here on the side table. So without further ado, I'd like to present our speakers.
Hi, welcome everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Bill Bosworth. I'm the police chief in town. Welcome to the beautiful Pompous Civic Community Center. Marion is a one-year-old facility. It used to be a kindergarten to 5th grade. Closed elementary, closed school. This facility is a perfect example of a can-do attitude in Stow. I'd just like to take a minute to acknowledge the presence of Bill Wrigley, our town administrator, in the back of the room, and Fire Chief Joe Landry. I welcome all here and the COA and their staff. Thank you for having us. I'd like to thank Citizens Bank and Minuteman Senior Services for coming out, and Detective Cassandra Ela. I've been police chief for 6.5 years. I've had the pleasure of working with D.A. Ryan several times. She's an asset to the community in this county. It's the biggest county in Massachusetts. She works tirelessly for victims of domestic violence, seniors, children, and she's taken on the opioid crisis head on. She does trainings for police departments and police officers, and she meets with the Middlesex chiefs on a regular basis. Her and her staff get out regular briefings and law updates on important matters. So she's been a pleasure to work with, and I just wanted to welcome her and thank her for coming today. Thanks. And I could just give her an example of what she does during this opioid crisis. We didn't have any knocking in town. I reached out to her staff, and within one day, we had enough supply for the police station and all the cruisers. So that just shows her can-do attitude and what she does to help us. Within one phone call, we had all the knocking that we could use. And I appreciate all your help.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, and thanks for having us today. You know, one of the things that is the best part of being the DA of Middlesex County, though, is what you just saw. You know, we have the police chief here, we have the fire chief here, we have the town administrator here. They all have lots of things to be doing. And right now, nothing bad or unfortunate has happened. But they've taken the time out of the day to be here. And, you know, this is a time when people have a lot to say about government and what are people doing and what do I get for my money and all of that. Well, this is an example, these kind of partnerships. And, you know, the chief talks about calling and needing Narcan. Well, I never call a police, a fire chief, or town administrators and say, we'd like to come put on a program to help keep people safe. We'd like to do something to prevent something happening. That the answer is not a resounding, sure, come on out, how can we help you? So sometimes we forget how fortunate we are, and that is something. Stow is certainly well served by folks at that level, and they're willing to be in front of the problem rather than dealing with it when something bad has happened. You know, I always say we'll all be very happy if we put ourselves out of business. If people aren't coming in saying I've been victimized or I've lost my money or my identity's been stolen. Because, as I'm going to talk about a little bit today, when that happens, and even when the police do a great job and they've investigated it and we prosecute it, that's all wonderful, but you getting your assets back is very hard to do. So much better for us if we can stop that from happening. So I'm really going to spend time talking about two pieces of this. And the first is what we all hear about and think about is kind of those scams, those anonymous sort of scams that get you with things. I'm going to give you an example of one because it probably best illustrates what happened. We do a lot of work with merchants and stores and banks and all kinds of folks to give them some information about what they should be alert to. And the hope is, and you'll see one piece of our work has been, if you've been to CVS or Walgreens or one of those places lately and you have bought a gift card, you will see now when you go to pay for that gift card, before they let you finish the transaction, so you know you bought a $25 gift card to McDonald's or someplace for someone, and before you can finish it, a question comes up on that little payment pad that says, do you understand that by buying this, the money is gone? Are you buying this because you really want to? Has someone asked you to buy it? There's sort of a whole question there. And you can't go forward with the transaction until you've read that and said, yes, I understand all that, and I understand that my money's now gone because I've bought this gift card. And that really is a result of a lot of that work that we've been doing with merchants, so that people, if they're in a situation where maybe they've been pressured to buy it, or they're not completely understanding what they're doing, it's one last stop before they pay for it to remind them of how much money they might be losing. So recently, an example of that was we had a woman who went up to the Burlington Mall, woman probably in her early 80s, completely in possession of her faculties, was driving, no problem with all of that. She went into the Apple store and she bought four $100 gift cards. So didn't exactly look like she was spending a lot of time on her computer. And the clerk started asking her, are you sure this is what you want to be doing? You know, the graduation gifts, you know, just kind of making conversation. And at first she was a little resistant to it. And she finally started to tell him that she had gotten a call earlier that day from somebody saying they were the IRS, and she owed some back taxes, and they needed to be paid by, you know, Tuesday or Thursday or whatever was a couple of days away. And the way she was supposed to pay it was to go to the Apple store and get these, I misspeak, for $1,000 cards, so $4,000 worth of gift cards. She was to get the four $1,000 gift cards. And what did she do? She got in the car and she drove to the mall to buy the gift cards. So it illustrates a couple of things. You know, I saw people sort of rolling their eyes and hearing that story, because when we're sitting in this room together and I tell you that story, it sounds foolish. And everybody thinks, I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to go buy $4,000 worth of gift cards. But every single day people do. And it really is because what happens with these scams. It is, number one, you're in your house by yourself, usually, when you're hearing this on the phone, and people get nervous. And it starts to sound a lot more reasonable than it would when you're sitting here with everybody else. I'll give you just sort of another piece of that. We have a guy who works in our office who does a lot of our work on these issues, and he got a phone call a few weeks ago from his mother. Now, his mother's in her early 70s. She is perfectly fine. She works a part-time job, cares for her grandchildren. I mean, there's no lack of understanding on her part. And he said, where are you going? And she said, well, I'm in a hurry. I have to get to the store. And he said, well, what's the matter? And she said, you know, you can't believe this. You know how your father does the taxes? Well, he made a mistake. And we got a call. We owe $1,100. And it's got to be paid by Friday. And I have to go get these gift cards. And he said, Mom, this is a scam. And she said, they had a big family wedding that weekend. She said, your aunts and uncles are going to be here. I'm not taking any chances of the police showing up at the door. I'm going off to get the gift cards. And that's how people fall into it. We have literally thousands of dollars every month that people go out and buy those cards. And as I say all the time, there's a couple of things you can be sure of. If you've ever tried to call the IRS, I don't think they have telephones. They are not calling you. All right, you know, everything has to be in a letter. You've got to put your blood type, your social security number, your firstborn child, everything you need on there. So they're not calling you. And the second piece is, you know, there may be some issues in government right now, but we are not running the United States government on Apple gift cards or green dot Visa cards that you buy at CVS. So when you really take it apart, it sounds foolish. But people get frightened. And they are off to do it. And that's how these scams are successful. You know, there's the thought that the government might shut down October 1st. You know, if they can't work it out, they'll shut down. And you might remember a couple of years ago, and the chief will remember this, a couple of years ago when we did have that shutdown, millions of dollars were lost after that because everybody got calls saying, this is Social Security. When we shut down the government, we lost some of your information. We're trying to reboot our computers. So you need to give me that information or we won't be able to mail your Social Security check this month. So of course, people panic because they need that money to have their rent taken out or whatever. So you're giving your Social Security number, you're giving your bank routing number, and of course it wasn't Social Security. And a lot of money disappeared. So all of those things are really opportunities for the scammers to be on top of that. And the same is true with respect to the other scam, which I find the most offensive. And it takes really two variations. And you might have seen lately that we've gotten some press because we've successfully prosecuted a couple of people for these. One individual for taking $80,000 and one for $150,000 he got from a family. It's that grandparent scam. And there's sort of two variations. You know, the first is your granddaughter Susan, who's 9, we have her. Don't make any phone calls. She was at her softball game. We have her. Unless you can produce $5,000 in the next couple of hours, something bad might happen. And don't check on where she might be. And the second part, which is even a little more complicated and has been incredibly successful because it is pretty sophisticated, you get the phone call, which is your grandson Daniel, who's in college in Colorado, got stopped for driving under the influence. And he's very upset. And I'm the lawyer who was appointed to represent him. He says he wasn't drinking. He really doesn't want his parents to know. And he said, call Nana, and she'll help me. And he needs some bail money. And can you send $1,500? And they're very clever, because the next part is, if you question it, the next part is, and here's Officer Smith, who made that arrest, and so now you think you're talking to the police officer, because somebody else gets on. And then after the first envelope goes, and again, another rule, anything that involves cash in an envelope will not end well. Just a simple life rule. If you're putting cash in the envelope, it's not going to be good. But they give you those directions. The money goes out. The next phone call is, you know, he needed to be held in a special part of the jail. Could you send another patch of money? And people keep doing that. We were out a couple of months ago doing one of these talks at a senior center, and while we did it, there was a husband and wife who were there who very regretfully raised their hand to say they'd lost $110,000. And they had asked all the appropriate questions. They had really sort of checked it out. They thought they were getting to the bottom of it before they sent the money. But again, you know, it's their grandchild, and they were worried. So the couple of interesting pieces from that, which I think are really things you can learn from. I spent about 20 years before I became the DA in our office doing these kinds of cases. And over that time, one of the things that fascinated me was how did they figure out who to make these calls to, all right? Because there's some calls we all get, right? We all get those calls in the middle of dinner that your chimney needs to be swept or this or that, right? And that is purely random. You live in an apartment complex, you don't have a chimney. Obviously, they don't know who they were calling, all of that. What was very interesting to me about these grandparent scams were, I am sure that we all know people who, if their life or their grandchild's life really depended on it, could not put together $150 in the next couple of hours. They just do not have the resources, and they couldn't do it. Well, what's pretty interesting is those people never get these calls. So we always encourage people, if you get the call, even if you are clever enough not to have sent the money, to call the police station and report that call, because then we get the word out through the Council on Aging and whatever. So other people, when they get the call, think, oh yeah, that's the call they told me about. I don't want to answer. So we know about a lot of people getting the calls, even if they don't send the money. Never in 20 years did we get a report that somebody got the call who literally didn't have $50. So what does that tell you? It tells you that there's some targeting of those phone calls, all right? And we spent a lot of time trying to figure out, you know, did the people use the same hairdresser, the same mechanic? What was the common denominator? And my theory, and it really is my own theory, is that the common denominator is medical facilities. Because, think about this. You go to the doctor, you go to the blood lab, you go to wherever, all right? They know, first of all, where you live. So if I live in Stow, I know what the best neighborhoods are. I know what the nicest streets are. All right? And I can make some assessment based on where you tell me you live, whether or not you might have any resources. And if I don't live in Stow, and you tell me your address, I can go on Google Earth, and I can see your house. And if you haven't looked at your own house, they are unbelievable now. I can Google Earth your house. Not only can I see your house in your neighborhood and get a sense, I can see what kind of cars you have in the driveway. So if I do that and I see you've got two very nice, expensive model cars, and you've got a lovely home where the lawns are well maintained, I can make an educated guess about what your resources are. What else do I know at a medical facility? I know what kind of insurance you have. So I know, do you have an expensive Medicare supplement? That tells me a little bit. Are you completely dependent on Medicare? That tells me a little bit about your financial situation. I usually know what your profession is or was. So I know that you were a neurologist. I can figure out you probably have some resources. So I got a lot of information, right? Think about the second piece of what makes that phone call happen. If I called you and I said to you, your grandson Michael just got arrested, and you don't have a grandson Michael, you're going to hang up. The way they hook you in, the bait, is there's some truth there. So how do they get that truth? Right? I'd suggest to you there's really three ways they do it. One of them overlaps with the medical piece. The first one is Facebook. All right? Nothing good happens on Facebook. All right? And I'm sure the police and the detective know, we get lots of people who come in and say, my house was robbed last week. I was on vacation. Anybody know you were on vacation? Nope, no one knew. Total secret. Nobody knew I was on vacation. Well, let me just check Facebook. 87 pictures. I'm in Aruba till Thursday. All right? Let me just tell you, the bad guys are looking on Facebook too. All right? So when your grandson Michael got accepted to the University of Colorado last year, and he took 75 pictures with the University of Colorado sweatshirt, and then he said, Nana, you're so proud of me. A 7th grader can figure out who Nana is. All right? I can't, but a 7th grader can. So there's that piece of it. All right? The second piece, and I always say I am a complete and total failure in my own family in this regard. My 87-year-old father had 12 grandchildren. Extraordinarily proud of them. If you sat beside him for 10 minutes at the blood lab, you would know the first names of every one of his grandchildren. You would know what sports they played, and you would probably know where they went to school. All right? And he would have said it all in his really good Irish whisper, so if anybody in the back hadn't heard him, you would know. All right? So think about this test, and I do this all the time, and it's pretty entertaining. The next time you were at a hospital or a doctor's office or whatever, spend 5 minutes listening to how much information you pick up. This is my favorite. You come out of the doctor's room and you're now making your appointment. So you're doing the shuffle of pulling your card out of your wallet, you're looking for your calendar, you're doing whatever. And the nice woman who you always talk to behind the counter is asking you whether September 19th would be convenient for your next appointment. No, I can't do that because, my granddaughter Elizabeth, she's getting married in Florida, and I'll be gone from the 12th till the 26th. When you now get that phone call that says, we have, your granddaughter Elizabeth, just before her wedding, she's been arrested, you are certainly paying attention. You sit in the lobby of a hospital for 20 minutes, not even trying. You can get a treasure trove of information. So you're going to hear a lot of conversation today about protecting your private information. I suggest that you think about that private information is more than your Social Security number and your bank accounts. It's that kind of personal information that, yes, of course, we all chat with people. You want to be chatting with people. But think carefully about what you're putting out there because it comes back to you. Sometimes when somebody's been scammed and we're talking through with them, what had happened in the weeks before? Did anything come up that was seen suspicious? one of the things that a lot of people will tell us is that they now remember, was not significant at the time, but 2 weeks before they got the grandparent scam, they got a phone call, usually at dinner time. Hello? Yeah, this is Billy. You don't remember me, but I grew up the street. I played baseball with your boys. You absolutely don't remember, but you want to be polite. And your kids did play baseball with a lot of kids. Oh, was that Jimmy? Yeah, Jimmy. I played baseball with Jimmy. And, I'm organizing the high school reunion. I was reaching out for Jimmy. Is he there? Oh, no, dear. Jimmy's been married for quite a while now. And, he lives over in Worcester. And he's got 3 children. He's got some 9-year-old twins. And you give out all this information. You hung up. You never thought of it again. Now you get that call about your 9-year-old twin grandchildren. And when you go back, after you put 2 and 2 together, when you go back to Jimmy, it's not his reunion year. Nobody ever called him. And he doesn't know. And you forgot he didn't play baseball. All right? So that's, they're good at it. You have to think about the people who are doing these scams. They are like any of us. They want to be good at what they do. They spend a lot of time thinking about how to be one step ahead of us in law enforcement. I always say it's like whack-a-mole. We think we've figured out how to short-circuit something, and they've thought of the next thing. And the other thing is, they want to do it in a way that does not bring them to the police attention. So the reality is, unfortunately, there are lots of people out there for them to target. So if you cut the conversation off, you hang up, you move on, they're going on. They're just going to the next person because they're not going to waste their time. Time is money for them. They want to make 50 phone calls and they'd like 50 people to be sending them money. So, think about putting that personal information out there and then think about just cutting any of those calls very, very short. But the other piece that I want to talk about, which is the more difficult thing to think about because it is more personal, is for all the money that gets lost in those kind of scams. The strangers, somebody calls you, they take your identity, whatever. The vast majority of money in property that people lose is to people they know. And it happens in a couple of different ways. One of which is they have a joint bank account with somebody. Right? And again, I always say I am a complete failure because I have 12 old aunts, all of whom have joint bank accounts with me. And the idea is, if something happens, I would be able to access the money for whatever they need or to pay the funeral home or to do whatever. The problem with that is, if you have a joint bank account, Nick will talk a little bit more about this, but if you have a joint bank account, no matter who put the money in there, that money legally belongs to both of you. So you have a bank account with your niece. She has contributed nothing to that account. It's all your money, your pension, the sale of your house, whatever it is. Suddenly, that money goes missing. She's withdrawn it, which she can because she's on the account. You come to the police, you come to me, all very unfortunate. I cannot prosecute her because you cannot steal what legally is yours. So she legally owned that money, same as if you had a husband and wife, one works, the other doesn't. The paycheck goes in there, the paycheck belongs to both of them. So there's that risk. The other piece of it is that not only can you not be prosecuted for your own stealing what you own, but when you have a joint bank account, the typical joint bank account, there's no obligation on my part as the niece to use that money for your benefit. So you might have had a conversation with your niece, as my aunts did with me. The plan is, could we use this money for the funeral home, the nursing home, whatever it is if I need it. But if I choose not to do it that way, there's absolutely nothing that anybody can do about it. So your niece told you, of course I'll take care of you, of course I'll use it that way. Well, now she needs the money, and she's not using it that way. Or in the bolder cases, as some people have said to us, I just knew it was all going to go to a nursing home or something later, so I spent it now. Nothing we can do about that. And, the other part that's hard about that, you put the person on the account with you because you trusted them. life changes. You know, maybe she's lost her job, there's a bad divorce, she's got a child with a substance issue, whatever it is, and it always starts the same way. Nana wouldn't mind if I just paid the rent one time. The money's never going back, and we're never getting it back even if we could prosecute her. And the second piece, and this is something I find incredibly puzzling, people literally lose millions of dollars every month this way. And it all kind of started, you remember back, I don't know, 20 years ago or so now, the hospitals all wanted you to sign a healthcare proxy when you went to the hospital. And attached to those healthcare proxies when they first came out was this power of attorney. And everybody was signing them, right? People had no idea what they were really signing, but they have caught on in popularity in a way that is not a good thing. Because what you need to understand about that healthcare proxy is when you give someone your healthcare proxy, what you are legally doing is you are creating another one of yourself. So you give your healthcare proxy to your daughter. You have made your daughter legally you. So anything that you could do with anything you own, sell it, rent it, mortgage it, anything you could do, she can now do. And it is completely legal. So one of the common scenarios we see is somebody has a house. They've owned the house since 1979. The mortgage has long been paid. All of a sudden, they get a notice in the bank, from the bank that the mortgage is overdue. They think, oh, funny, I remember when I used to have a mortgage. I don't have a mortgage anymore. And they call the bank and find out that the healthcare proxy has taken out a mortgage on the house. All right? Absolutely legal, cannot be prosecuted for it. And the most distressing piece is people, I used to sometimes say I felt like I ran Family Feud in my office because you decided to give the healthcare proxy to your son. But your daughter was kind of annoyed that you gave it to her brother. So you gave her one too. And then, you know, you get your other son, you know, he's not too dependable, but he lives in Chicago, so that's not a problem. And he gets one too. Typically what happens is all three of them are stealing things. All right? Everybody's writing some checks. You know, well, I know my sister is probably doing this, so I'm going to do that. So that is the most dangerous document you can ever sign. Now, they have a value, which is to have somebody be able to make decisions for you. But it really is a case of what you get what you pay for. You want to do one. You want to get a professional, a financial planner or a lawyer or somebody to help you with it. And you want to think about what you want someone to be able to do. So you're going in to have your hip replaced. You're going to be out of commission for 3 months. You would like your son to be able to take care of your affairs for those 3 months. You should be giving him a health care proxy that extends from October 1st to January 1st, and that limits his spending to $2,000. That way, he can't clean out everything you own. If you want to give somebody a proxy or a power of attorney that's only going to get activated if you are so unwell that you can't do anything for yourself, you want one that says that. Says can only be triggered by a note from my doctor. That way your doctor has to say, yes, you know, you're in no condition to make any decisions. The biggest issue is limiting what people have access to. So a scenario we see all the time is somebody spends 3 months in Florida. They give a power of attorney to their son to pay the bills while they're gone. They leave in the joint account all their money. They come back, the account's cleaned out. We're not getting that money back. If you wanted to do that, you want a power of attorney that extends for however long you're going to be gone. You want to have left in the account that they're going to have access to only as much money as you can afford to lose. If it's going to cost $1,500 for your bills while you're gone, you know, put $2,000 in the account and be done with it. You might lose the $2,000. That's better than coming back and finding everything is gone. So those are hard conversations. It's hard to think that somebody you trust is going to deceive you in that way. It is certainly the most common kind of situation that we see coming to us. And it extends not just to family, but it's your caregivers, it is the neighbors who are helpful, who one day you gave the debit card to in the middle of winter to do something for you. Now they've got it. Sometimes the bank is going to tell you, well, you gave away the number. We can't help you with that. So those are the harder pieces to be thinking about. I will, before I'm finished, just share the one. People always want to ask me the question, and I'd be a rich woman if I knew the answer to this, of the how do I stop those phone calls? There is clearly no way to stop those phone calls. They go on forever. But I will tell you the most interesting new fact I have about that, which is if I am a company that does those robocalls, I buy lists of numbers. When I buy those lists, they're random lists. And I have no idea whether any of those numbers are good numbers or not. So people might have moved away and those half of the numbers are no good anymore. So I buy them for very cheap. Say I buy them, and this is made up, but say I buy them for a nickel a piece. If I have a list of numbers that actually go to a real person, that number is worth more. So maybe that number is worth a quarter. So what that means is, and it's kind of contrary to everything you think, because I can't stand to listen to a phone ring, but if your phone rings and you pick it up and you say hello, and somebody says, you know, this is the Stow Chimney Company, and you say, yes, this is a bad time, and you hang it up. You have now increased the value of your number from a nickel to a quarter. So the trick is, don't pick up the phone. Let the phone go straight to the answering machine. Because even when they get the answering machine, they don't know whether the number's any good. There are lots of people who move away or, you know, are gone for 6 months, whatever, and have their answering machine on. So everybody tends to pick up the number. I might even have some relatives who like to pick the phone up and have a few words with the marketer who's calling during dinner, maybe. But just resist that urge. Don't have that conversation. And the other piece is, the one other new phone scam, which is everywhere, and I got one of these calls, is you will get a bill for something. Something will show up, $24.99 for something on your credit card. You will call up, they will say, oh, that was when you bought the computer service or something. Well, I never did that. I don't have a computer, I didn't buy computer service. And then they will play you a recording of your own voice, which will say, would you like to sign up for the computer service? And you hear yourself saying yes. The way they do that is they make a phone call to you, and they ask you questions that will elicit a yes answer. So you pick up the phone, someone says, is this Joe? You say no. They say, well, is this 617? They rattle off the number. Your instinct, of course, will be to say yes, but there's no Joe here. They now have you saying yes, and they can doctor that tape to put the other question in. So it's just another good, I got one of those calls, and because I was thinking about it, I just wasn't saying yes to anything. It was driving them crazy. They went like 10 questions down the road. You know, if they had asked me, is it a nice day out? I was saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. So it's just another good reason not to get people on the phone and have any conversation, because it's probably going to reappear and be used against you. So I know that's a lot of information. There's more information in your packet. We're going to talk, both Nick and Renee are going to talk a little bit, both about Nick from Citizens, about the bank, and then Renee will talk a little bit about how Minuteman Senior Services is helpful, how you can reach out to them. And then Cassie will talk a little bit about how they do their protection from the police department. So again, thank you all for having us today. I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Thank you so much, Marianne. That was fantastic. I'm going to turn on the projector here real quick. If I can reach it. Looks like we're good. Everyone has a packet in there in regards to the quick workshop that I'll be presenting. We'll be talking about different financial things that you might come across. So it's really about your overall finances, right? And how do we make sure that we're protected in our everyday finances, right? If we're looking at last year alone, we're looking at almost 15.4 million Americans that were victims of identity theft. And that turned to be an overall total of $16 billion, right? So that is a large, large amount, right? Well, let's see. So again, 15.4 million Americans, right? How do we make sure that we're not a part of that? How do we make sure that we're protecting ourselves on a day-to-day basis, right? So let's start out with, what is identity theft? So when I think of identity theft, I think any time that any piece of my information is shared, is taken away from me, and it's used against me without my authorization, right? Here are some of the frauds that are happening out there when it comes to your finances. We'll look at credit card fraud, which could be as simple as someone taking your credit card number. Could be as someone actually changing the address of your credit card and receiving your statement and looking at what transactions you do, where you shop, right? Utility fraud, it's very, very dangerous because someone can open information under your name, and the utility company is not going to report that right away. That might take a month, 2 months, 3 months. And they will send it to a different address. They will not send it to your address because they haven't used your address to open up the utility. They'll only use your name, maybe your social, right? Now, this will get reported 3 to 6 months down the road to a collection agency, which then will report it to your credit report. So you might not find out about a utility fraud 6 months down the road, a year down the road sometimes. Okay? Bank fraud. So bank fraud can happen in various different ways, right? So we talked about the joint account situation, right? So we want to make sure that we have the right person to the account, someone that we want to share our information with. Bank fraud could happen by someone stealing your checkbook, stealing your statement, using your debit card, stealing your credit card number, your debit card number. Many different ways that a bank fraud could happen, right? Government documentation. The biggest thing for government documentation, you want to think about if someone files a tax income and you're reporting under your Social Security number. Okay. So we want to make sure that if we get a letter from the IRS, we don't ignore it, right? Typically, they will send you a package of information that you've been duplicated on your tax filing. So you would need to fill that information in detail and send it to the IRS within about 15 days. Okay. Friendly fraud. That is the biggest and the highest rising fraud out there. Okay. So we keep people in our lives that we trust. We keep people and we share information, as we talked about Facebook, right? But even just every day-to-day people that we live our lives with, we share our information with. We don't know what their financial situation is. We don't know what their needs are, right? As human beings, we tend to not share our finances with just anyone, right? But we'll share everything else. We'll tell them about everything else. But our finances, we won't share them. We're going to keep them secret. But that's how people get your information, and they'll use it against you, right? Other frauds out there, someone can simply use just your name and your information to, if they get pulled over, they'll give the police the wrong information, right? Could be as simple as that. In the medical offices, right? Somebody can steal their information that way, right? So how does your information get stolen? So dumpster diving is the most common one typically. So if you're receiving information in the mail and you're not shredding that information, get a shredder right away. Start shredding the information. Make sure that also in the bottom, if you want to opt out for certain things, you can. So how many of you get notifications in the mail in regards to get a new credit card or here's a new offer, right? So there's an option in the bottom there where you can actually opt out for certain items, right? So that way you won't get so much junk mail every day and leave it open into the post office for someone to take it, okay? Shoulder surfing. So shoulder surfing could be very, very simple. You are out at a grocery store. You're using your debit card, you enter your PIN, someone is right behind you looking at your PIN. Later on, they'll steal your wallet. Guess what? Now they have your card and they have your PIN, right? So what I recommend is that you make sure that when you're out in a grocery store or when you're out in an open area, that you use cards that have a chip technology. Does everyone have a chip technology? And if you don't, I would recommend to go ahead and get that right away. So what the chip technology does is that it puts an 8-digit number in front of your debit card number that will allow for that information not to be stored into the terminal. And that number changes every single time that you use your debit card or your credit card. Okay? So I would strongly recommend making sure that you use that. Skimming devices. So skimming devices are these small devices that typically are placed either at ATMs or you might see them at gas stations. And typically they're somewhere where it's kind of out of nowhere, right? So if you go to a Citizens Bank, for example, or maybe the bank where you bank at, I know that for a fact, Jason and Katie back there, they check their ATMs every single day to make sure there is no skimming devices. The skimming devices will read your card information, will read your expiration date, and that's it. That information is there. Now they can use it or sell it for a penny on the black market, just like that, right? So I want to make sure that when you're out in an open, make sure that you look for those little tiny machines. Make sure that doesn't look like something has changed from your day-to-day activity or ATM that you use or gas station that you use. Okay. Hacking. So hacking can happen through a computer. So you want to make sure that if you're in a Wi-Fi area, if you're in an open public area and you're using a computer, make sure you don't share all your information. Make sure you don't use your bank information where you're in an open public, right? Use the virus protection softwares. One thing that could happen though, if you're using a computer and you get a pop-up for a virus security, just be careful. Don't click on that. Most of them could be scams where they'll actually retrieve your information and enter the virus into your computer, okay? Versus being a good way of protecting your computer. Changing your address. I'll talk a little bit about changing your address on your credit card, right? That actually unfortunately happened to me several years ago where my credit card statement was stolen, the address was changed, and later on I received a call from the bank saying, you're looking to charge $999 down in Maryland? I said, I've never been to Maryland. I live in Massachusetts. That's where I use my card. So the banks will do that, will protect you and if your card information gets stolen. So you might receive a call that will tell you that your card's been used. They'll be very safe to protect and close that card for you. So you don't have to worry too much about that. But look to make sure if you're missing a piece of mail, right? If you're not receiving your statement, why aren't you receiving your statement? Or did you go into your online banking? And that way, you're protected that way, so you don't get so much information in the mail. Right. Stealing material items, so it could be as simple as just your wallet, could be as simple as your driver's license, could be as simple as even your birth certificate, death certificate, could be anything that it belongs to you. Pretexting, so we'll have someone that as the DA earlier spoke in regards to someone has some basic information for you, they can continue to call you and get additional information. So that's what pretexting is. So here's a few quick things to make sure that protect your social security number as much as you can. Right? I talked about using a shredder and safeguarding your mail. Did you know that you can actually go to the post office? So if you're going down to Florida, or if you're going down to Maryland, or if you're traveling away for months at a time, you can actually block the mail that you receive at home, right? You can go to the post office and let them hold your mail for you, okay? So make sure that if you're traveling away for a couple weeks or so, make sure you do that. You don't want to leave your mail unattended. Use Caution Online and use ArctiGas password and change your passwords, right? So we want to make sure that we're being very careful into online banking. We're being very careful all websites that we use. If you look through different websites now, there is an HTTPS if it doesn't have an S in the end, that is not a secure website. So be careful of putting your debit card or credit card information. That information could be stored somewhere else and taken away from you. So make sure you're using a website that is secure. Okay. When you change your passwords and you keep your passwords, I know it's always challenging for me, making sure I remember all these passwords. But you can come up with keywords that would make sense for you, but don't use anything that belongs to you, your name, your date of birth, your children, your grandchildren. Use something like hot weather, cold winter, right? Something that most people won't guess about you. Make sure that you monitor your accounts. So I tend to monitor my account on a daily basis. The biggest thing when you monitor your accounts, you actually want to see if there is deposits made into your account into small dollar amounts. So someone could have gotten a hold of your account number and they're actually testing to see if their account works. So if there is like a penny deposit, there's like a 10 cents deposit, they're tested to see if it actually can retrieve money from your account. Okay. So, and when you're checking your account, make sure that you look for deposit, not just what you've used, right? And watch for warning signs, right? Watch for different types of warning signs. So, is your mail missing, right? Why is this transaction here? Did I conduct this transaction? At that point, call your bank. We're there to help you. We're there to guide you. So call your bank. Say, hey, I don't understand this transaction. Can you please give me some more information, right? What I strongly recommend is also looking at your credit report. So your credit report has a lot of information in there in regards to what accounts you have opened, what type, your name, your address. It has details as far as how you're keeping with your credit as well. You want to check your credit through annualcreditreport.com. That is a government website and is the only website that will provide you a free credit report. Okay, I would strongly recommend doing that at least 3 times a year. Now, you can only get it once per bureau. So what you want to do is that you want to look at pulling Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion separately. I would say pull Equifax in January, Experian in May, and then TransUnion towards the end of the year. This way you're staying on top of your credit report. So if there is something that someone took your identity, now you can protect yourself that way. Okay? You can stay on top of it. You can always put your credit into a freeze. So what does that mean? A credit freeze will allow for financial institutions to not be able to open any accounts under your name. So if I'm a thief and I have your information and I go to a bank and try to apply for a credit card under your name, I wouldn't be able to do so because the bank will not see any information from me, right? So the credit freeze, it's typically at a small cost and it's per credit bureau. In Massachusetts, it's $5 per credit bureau. And if you want to lift the freeze, also another $5 every time you temporarily move it, okay? Close the accounts. So if you become a victim of identity theft, close your accounts. Close your accounts and open new ones. Okay. Always file a police report. We want to make sure that we are keeping track of it. If you have to go to court for any particular reason, you want to have a record on file. Okay. You can file a complaint with the FTC. And lastly, identity theft insurance. Typically, identity theft insurance does cost money. So if that's a route that you want to go, you want to think about the cost of it. You want to think about, is it worth it for you? It's based on your individual situations. So I would definitely take a look at that if that's something you want to explore. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll take it over to Renee.
So I know we're running a little short on time, so I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Renee Prestia, and I'm the Protective Services Program Manager at Minuteman Senior Services. So Minuteman Senior Services, we are located in Bedford, but we cover 16 cities and towns, and we have sister agencies throughout the state that cover every city and town in Massachusetts. And we all have home care department that helps with services of how to keep someone at home for as long as possible. We have a money management department, a nutrition department, family caregiver support. So we can offer a lot of services of how to keep you at home. Protective services, and one of the reasons is I'm here, is we receive a lot of phone calls of seniors who are victims or, of alleged financial exploitation. I can say that on Friday of last week, we received 9 reports from our 16 cities and towns, and 6 out of those 9 were all financial exploitation cases. We look at financial exploitation cases in regards to when there's someone with an interpersonal relationship, so a family member, someone that has a joint bank account, a power of attorney. And like Marion and Nick said, that person who is on that joint bank account or someone who you've given power of attorney to, as sad as it is, you think that it's your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, whoever it is that you trust, you want to make sure that you give them limited power. To be able to access your funds. I just wanted to run 2 situations by you to kind of give you an example of cases that we see and what we can do. The first one we've received recently is how we've worked with the community is we actually got a call from the local senior center after they received a call from a local pizza delivery place and a local CVS, where they've both started seeing this senior. All of a sudden, pizzas were being delivered to the senior's house, and he had no knowledge that pizza was, or why pizza was being delivered. But then he was also going to CVS to get money orders. And what was going on is he was involved in a scam where he was told that he was going to win the lottery, and he would go and mail out thousands of dollars at a time. He would lose that money, realize he was in a scam, and he would change his phone number. And then the scammer started delivering pizza to his house with notes attached to the delivery, because if you order pizza online, you can add a little description, and it was notes to say, we haven't been able to reach you, call us. So he would call back again, and he would get back involved in scams. So this was the community at work where they've started to notice this, and they connected to the local council on aging, who was able to go out there and speak more about it, and found out that he had a meeting the next day with his bank to take out a reverse mortgage because he's already cleared out his bank account, and he needs more money to give to scams. So Protective Services was called to help so that we can, 1, stop the financial bleed, 2, get him back in touch with his daughter, who she is his power of attorney. She does some bill paying, but she was only on one account with him. So she didn't know about all these other accounts that he was opening and spending money with. So we were able to connect her and get her more involved to stop the financial bleed, stop him from getting a reverse mortgage, and continue to, do this so he didn't lose his house. And then another aspect, so that was, scam, something, that, we may not be able to prosecute because we don't know this person, but on another one for someone who has family is we had a case where a bank was able to call us and inform us that they saw some transactions happening on an elder's account that, were unusual for this person. And the elder had no idea. We went there, we advised him, he willingly worked with us, we went to the bank, and we saw that his daughter was helping with bill paying. He trusts the daughter, he never checked the accounts, and all of a sudden she liked to groom dogs, and she liked to show the dogs at trade shows and things like that, and all of the money was going to, groom her dogs and buy fancy pet supplies so that she could show her dogs. And, we were able to then show him and then, remove her as power of attorney and help him get someone else that he trusted. So when you hear Protective Services or you hear someone that calls you from Minuteman and they say Protective Services, know that it's a social worker that looks like me. We're not scary. We're not here to give out your privacy or all of your information. We're here to work with you. We're here to help you. We're here to, identify a problem, connect you to the local Council on Aging if you're not already connected, or work with the Council on Aging if you're already connected because they may know you better than us, and, see what we can do to offer you help and support. As Marion said earlier, once the money's gone, we are not able to help you retrieve any of that money, but we can maybe offer you some services and some support to get you back up and running again. It might be offering gift cards, it might be getting you on some services or benefits so that we can help. Because the biggest thing that we see is people lose money, and now they're not able to pay their rent, and they're being evicted, or their electricity shuts off, or they're not able to buy food for themselves, because a lot of people who are over the age of 60 are already on a fixed income. And one of the biggest scams I just want to add before I move over, but is it's September, and a lot of people are going back to school. We get a lot of people who have signed co-sign loans for their grandkids to go to college, and then their son and daughter don't pay that loan, and then who gets on the hook is grandma or grandpa. So just remember, once you're signing something, you're on the hook for paying that loan back. So if someone asks you to sign something, someone look at it. We always suggest bring it, if you have a family attorney, bring it to that attorney. Go over with it. You can come to the local council on aging. I know Sharon and everyone here would be willing to sit down and talk to you. You can connect with Minuteman. You can ask us. You can go to the local police. But just, think about something before you sign it, because again, we don't want you to end up losing your house or losing your home or have an inability to maintain it if now you're paying a, 4-year college tuition, which I don't know what it is, but I know what mine was 13 years ago, and I'm still paying it. So if you hear from Minuteman, if you let us out, let us talk to you. We will keep your privacy. We're not going to share with the world that you're involved with us, but we want to be able to work with you. We want to be able to connect you to resources and see what we can do to help.
So bringing all of that close to the home, Detective Ellis here to talk a little bit about a lot of the work, a lot of good work that the Stow Police Department has done in particular.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? I see a lot of familiar faces out there. I've been with the police department for about 4 years now, and it really became evident to me when I first started that not only are the seniors important to the town itself, but also to the police department. And the chief has really given me the opportunity to work with all of you and the Council on Aging to start a lot of these initiatives. Basically, we have two categories of initiatives that we like to bring up. One is through education, and one is through just encouraging to report incidences. So under education, back in 2014, we started the RAD class, which is Resisting Aggression with Defense, and it's a national class that I'm certified to teach that goes over risk reduction strategies, medication safety, fraud, and financial scams. We go over how to handle emergencies and personal safety techniques, and one of my favorite parts is the actual physical defense techniques. So that kind of is the whole education piece, so to kind of bring that back into the financial scams as well. And also under the education, we do various internet fraud talks and awareness talks with the seniors and with the other community members. Myself, and I know Detective Sergeant Solis has also done a lot of classes as well. Through the encouraging to report, if you are involved in some kind of incident where you do get scammed or whatever it is, it can be very embarrassing to go through that. And you may not want to report it, but that's one thing we like to encourage, because if we don't know about it, then we don't know what's going on in town. So we've really tried to initiate the relationships that we do have with the seniors to be able to get those stories out of you. So not only do we like to go to the senior picnic or the breakfast, it's great to have conversations with you about your grandkids and things like that, but we also want to know what's happening. If you know about friends or family that are going through different scams or fraudulent activities, we like to hear about it in citizens, and the Minuteman has said we like to report it just so that we're aware of it, and then maybe we can track some of these people down. And one of my favorite parts is just stopping in to say hi. So that kind of helps as well. And throughout the years, if you guys ever need anything from us, feel free to come. And even if you think it's a silly question, no question is silly, we've heard it all. So feel free to come in, say hi. If you have a question about something that had happened or whatever it may have been, we're always here to at least talk to you about it, even if we don't do an official police report. So anything you guys ever need, feel free to come in and say hi to us.
thank you for having us here today. I hope you find the information helpful as well as the take-home information. I think all of us will be here for a couple of minutes if people have questions. So thank you.
Okay, so might do a quick photo op, maybe against this wall over here. Grab all of you. Okay. Okay.